What's going on, Dragons? Happy Friday. As always, I'm your co-host, Cory, and welcome to episode 26 of the ERCast, your weekly Friday night Magic pre-show. Joining me in the Dragon's Den this week, as always, your co-host, my co-host, it's Cole. Cole, how has your week in Magic been treating you?
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Yeah, Cory, thanks for asking, man. My week in Magic has been pretty good. You know, obviously, just like every week, I wish I could have got more games in, but I did get a couple games in this weekend and had a pretty memorable game where I was at a point where if anybody looked at the board, they would have told you I was winning that game. They might have even told you I had already won that game. But I am embarrassed to tell you, Cory, I couldn't close out that game with like everything on the board, with drawing literally my whole deck. I had nothing in my hand that could kind of take me to the win. And it was an embarrassing. I'm not going to say I spun my wheels for more than 5 minutes because I was trying my hardest to keep it brief, but it was a memorable game in the sense of how badly I performed. So I'll keep that out there.
Just a massive choke job is what you're telling me.
I milled the wrong pieces at the wrong times, and so I was just left with all gas, no brakes, and couldn't really take it to the dub.
Oh god, that's terrible. My week in Magic, so I was on a charity stream. Well, actually, okay, by the time this thing airs, I'll have been on 2 charity streams in the week time. So one actually after we're done airing, and then one that aired on, let's call it Friday. That's how messed up my week has been as far as timeline. And can I just say that I honestly believe that if you're in multiple time zones and you set like a evening charity stream, there's got to be some kind of home field advantage to it, right? Because I was in the stream with John at Chaotic Commander, and
right,
this guy, it's like 9:30 for him, it's 10:30 for me, and Ken EDH, who was also in the pod, and then it was, I believe, like 8:30 or 7:30 for someone else, and I made so many misplays, on my 16th hour of being awake, 18th hour of being awake, whatever it was, that I was sitting there like, what do you mean all my stuff doesn't have haste? Because I was slapping cards down, turning them sideways, declaring attacks that weren't legal. Nobody else was making these misplays. I'm going to blame it on the time.
It happens, man. I'll tell you, like I had a pretty long phase of playing chess online, and after 9 o'clock, you could see a statistical correlation with your games losing more and more often, just because after a certain point, you're not firing on all cylinders. Like that's why if you play League of Legends at 3 a.m., you're on that 50 game losing streak. I hope you feel called out right now if you're listening. But
I think. But I thought the logic behind like League of Legends and like TTRPGs and all those, or not TTRPGs, but like those MMOs and stuff like that, was if you're on at 3 a.m., that's when Japan and Korea are just logging in to start their day, and that's why I'm on the 50 game losing streak.
That's true, man. That's true. It's it's very fun just staying up long enough to see people from the other side of the world logging off after they clock out of work.
So this week, you guys, we're not going to be talking about time zones, as thrilling as it may be, but we're going to be talking about co-hosts a little bit. So whereas I have a co-host named Cole, some of you have a co-host in the command zone with 2 commanders that say partner. So we were going to talk this week about partner commanders and backgrounds and friends and doctors and all that kind of good stuff. Anything basically that lets you not necessarily cheat, but kind of cheat the card count in the command zone.
Yeah, in layman's terms, it's an extra card, whether it's, a creature or an enchantment in the form of a background. These are, decks that have 2 cards outside of your deck, leaving you with 98 cards, a microgram more consistency than a deck that has 99 cards, and a slight advantage in the sense that you have consistent plays on whatever turns your commander's CMC lines up with. So if you have a 2-drop partner with a 3-drop partner commander as both of your commanders, you have your first couple turns lined up for you every single game.
I like how you struggled for the word you already said. So if you've got like a 2-drop partner and a 3-drop partner, it lines up just smooth sailing.
I was talking country, Corey. I said if you got a 2-drop partner and a 3-drop partner, then no, I'm just messing
Just
around.
Pre lining up for Outlaws of Thunder Junction.
Yeah, precisely. But there's a couple different types, and at this point they're pretty much all the same. There's just a couple of restrictions that they all follow. But you have your partners, you have your partner withs, you have your doctor's companions, you have your regular companions, and then you have your backgrounds. And so really everything.
Whoa. I forgot about the most important one, Cole. Friends Forever.
Friends Forever. Which basically is so there's partners is the most broad. Any 2 partners can be put together, and then you got your partner with, which is the opposite. It's a specific set of 2 creatures that have to go together in the command zone. So if it's Pier and Toothy, spoiler alert, my favorites, or Sylvar and the girl who cares about elves or like sacrificing, Tren. Then finally in between that there's Friends Forever, which is basically partner with, but with a limited group. So it has like that same variety of you can attach any of these 7 creatures together, but they can only be attached to each other. So you don't get any Thrasios Wernogs, walking around. That's
why not? Why can't I have a Thrasanog deck? Classic Thrasanog. Yeah, I mean, all they really do is like you have partner, which is very open-ended, and then after that, it's just you want to do partner again, but restrict the card pool that you can delve around in.
Which, it kind of speaks to the power of those cards. Like maybe they're too strong to be paired up with just any old plain partner. But the reality of the situation as well is that these cards with the Friend Forever stamp on them were all from the Universes Beyond Secret Lair Stranger Things set. So, it keeps them kind of restricted to that IP, even though the cards have been brought into the Magic universe with some really sweet arts. Definitely worth checking out.
Do you have, don't mind me asking, do you have any decks that fall under this qualification? Like partners or backgrounds or anything like that?
Yeah, so I classically one of my favorite decks for a long time was a Pier and Toothy deck, like I foreshadowed about 45 seconds ago, which is Simic. It's 2 partners that have partner with, and so there's one kind of cute thing about partner with, where when you play a creature with partner with, if you're playing a 2-headed giant game, which is when these cards originally came out, you could have your team member search their library for the card that they partner with. So for Pier, the Imaginative Rascal, and Toothy, the Imaginary Friend, you could cast one of them and then have somebody else search for the other. But in traditional, EDH, where you don't have a teammate, the wording is any player. Target player may put, so-and-so creature into their hand from their library and then shuffle. So if you're feeling like you have like a really bad shuffle, like I'm only drawing lands or I'm only drawing non-lands, you can just you get a free shuffle in there. It's like playing a fetch land, and man, that's a good feeling. But regardless of the feeling of the shuffle, I will say Pier and Toothy, that's a counters, a +1/+1 counters deck. It's Toothy draws you a ton of cards. It was a great generic Simic value engine.
You just went on like a Pier and Toothy ramble fest. I love Pier, I love Toothy. You could have friends. Your friends who could be your partner in a 2-headed giant. Like my partner and your partner could have partners.
Well, it's important because I mean, people don't really, care too much when you explain it at the table because it's an old and outdated mechanic. But when you're like, I play my commander, I'll go ahead and shuffle I'll search for Toothy, fail to find, and if you include a partner in your deck, and it's not in your command zone, you get the same benefits, but having it in the command zone means you just get the benefit of a free shuffle. Like, man, I put my deck in deck list order every once in a while. I like to see how it looks in paper alphabetically, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I get a game where I'm drawing my talismans, my signets, my soul rings, my nature's lord, my farseeks, nothing but ramp, and I just need to give it a thorough 5 to 10 minute shuffling sesh to get it back to normal. So you get that advantage in the command zone.
I'm super guilty of that too, where especially with Moxfield, I'll line things up so I can look at it on Moxfield, like as I'm building a deck or as I'm upgrading a deck. And then I go, how did I draw 7 lands? And then how did I not draw any lands? I drew nothing but creatures.
So yeah, I mean, not to go on a tangent, but I will say Moxfield is like honestly the best system for deck building. I used to be a hardcore deck stats fanboy, and I still have decks on deck stats for days. I got secret decks that I won't pull out for another 10 to 12 years in my deck stats folders and folders and folders. But Moxfield and the ability to like playtest cards, you can use OBS to stream that into Spell Table. Like it is just a revolutionary website and makes deck building pretty easy. Not sponsored, but it's pretty good.
Again, not a sponsor. Actually, you know which one I started with though was Tapped Out. When I very, very first got into Magic.
That's for the real ones, man. That's for the real ones right there.
And I learned about Moxfield way down the line, and I have not looked back because Tapped Out is an amorphous blob that you have to navigate compared to the other one.
It's a lot more like you feel like you're actually coding when you're doing stuff in Tapped Out versus Moxfield or deck stats.
You're 100%, because it's like, oh man, look at my brand new iPhone, and you're going, iPhone, look at the Linux that I'm running on my BlackBerry.
Now, I'll tell you though, if you want a busted deck list, like if you're searching to net deck somebody, like if you're going to steal somebody's deck off the internet, I go to Tapped Out, because Tapped Out, that's where the people who like, oh, I've been playing Magic for 25 years and I'll never change. They use Tapped Out till the day they die. You just go ahead and pop in your commander and Tapped Out and like highlight it by like scores descending, and you find some juice, my man. You find some serious juice.
Wait, well, by the way, I like that we're talking about this now. We're supposed to be having a lovely conversation about partner commanders, and we're over here like, no, but Tapped Out is where the secret Reddit trolls live, and they've got the spice.
They do.
Moxfield is where the convenience lives. Where if you want to see a bright, colorful website that you can sort and have all this fun with, there's that. If you want to be a shill for Command Zone, you could try out Architect, which I've never tried, but I've heard it's good, I guess.
I don't like the visual of it. I like Moxfield visual. All right. Well, so hey, to get back to partners. So the partner mechanic came out back in like 2016, which is when a lot of those when all the 4-color commander decks came out. That's your Atraxas, that's your Kanaeus and Tyros, and then the rest of the bunch. And they kind of revolutionized, like particularly the world of CEDH, because like giving you these color combinations is it's just ridiculous. It's a really great way to get that coveted 4-color combo, because there's not a ton of commanders that fulfill that on their own. But these cards aren't necessarily restricted to CEDH. A lot of them kind of have that reputation. Like if you look at Temna or Thrasios, or even like Rograk or Silas, kind of have like Silas Wren have some Krark and Sakashima. I mean, like the CEDH pool of commanders is the top 16 deck list is most definitely a large percentage is partner commanders, but they are available for casual EDH as well. And the other host of partner commanders that aren't like kind of relegated to that role are really cool and kind of allow you to have a deck that I love this deck. I have a Golgari deck. I have Marin that I've been thinking about kind of like swapping up recently. And like
what? Alphys and some green one.
I'm an Ikra Shadiki fan, an Ikra Shadiki supporter, and then you slam pretty much anything in there. But the point is like I can pick a Golgari partner commander and run the deck the exact same without making any changes, and then I can decide if I want to add red and make it a Jund deck, or maybe I want to make it Sultai, add a little bit of blue, and add any one of the like 80 partner cards that are available, and kind of like take the deck in a whole new direction without like spending a fortune on a new 99.
I kind of like I guess what you would call like the lower tier of partner commanders, because you're right. There are ones that shape CDH like Timna, and I think Timna and Crom were big in CDH for a while.
That's Blue
I'm not a
Farm.
CDH player. We'll go with it.
It's Blue Farm. I mean, Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator. Like, there's even decks for
Argo.
Miara, Paco, and Haldon. I mean, pretty much the point is partners busted.
But I like the ones that are all your commanders get blank. Like when you look at the Falthus, which is all your commanders get Death Touch, I believe. The was it Kelith, the horse? Yeah,
that gives
horse
commanders, whenever they attack, you get a 1/1 counter on them.
Yeah, I kind of like those, like that lower-ish tier, only because I feel like you can build a deck that works functionally, but it's not necessarily busted. And we play more casual anyways.
Well, and I'll tell you, man, like I have a Zergo Helm Smasher deck that I refer to as my Zergo beep Smasher deck, and it's Mardu. You know, you can slam dunk a Timna Bruce Tarl, you can slam dunk a Timna Rograk on there and kind of get the same effect. And it's just like a cute way to swap up the deck, make it, you know, a little bit different on the day if I'm not feeling like playing, you know, the deck that I've had for you know this long period of time. It's like it doesn't have to be busted if the deck's not built to abuse them. They're you know, they typically have good value, and you know, why not give it a chance?
Yeah, and I think too, even the partner with commanders, they're usually pretty fun too. Like I've got one, actually my very first deck. The very first deck I got was the Gavi precon. And they, in a lot of those Ikoria precons, they had those partner with commanders as backup options. So I don't really run Gavi so much as I run Brawlin and Shabraz, which is one's a discard, you know, get +1/+1 counters and ping everyone for 1 life, and the other one is +1/+1 counters for drawing and you gain a life. So they're kind of like opposite-ish, but they work off of draw and discard.
Yeah, it's actually it's a really fun deck to play against. It's got some cool combos in there, and I love Shabraz. Brawlin's all right, but Shabraz, that's where it's at.
You know what's funny is, so obviously this is like a wheel deck, right? If you were to build around it specifically, you know, oh, I discard my hand, I draw 7 cards, and look, Shabraz got 7 1/1 counters and gained 7 life, and Brawlin pinged everyone for whatever.
Right.
But when I first, so since this was my very first deck, when I first got it, you know, I'm on YouTube. This was way before creator days. This was when, you know, I was just like, oh, I'm trying to get into this game called Magic. So I go on YouTube and I was trying to look up like budget ways to upgrade that deck. And the amount of salty stuff that people give you is ridiculous. Like I think I could have gotten ejected from any play group if I built decks in the way these like quote unquote beginner budget guys do.
What's going on? Do you remember any of the kooky?
You know what I do? Okay, I'm not going to out their channel, but let's say it's a very popular creator who makes a lot of decks on YouTube at a budget level, and they may or may not, you know, have a pig.
About commander quarters, everybody.
This guy, I kid you not, I was looking up how to upgrade this deck. Now, obviously, the upgrade was for like Gavi at the time, because that's the main commander. And there's a cycling, I think it's like Decree of Annihilation, where it's like a MLD cycling card.
Isn't that a black card though?
No, it's red. There's a red one that's like Decree of something. So you cycle it and it destroys all lands. Or destroys like lands.
No, you're so right. It's Decree of Annihilation. It's 10 mana to exile all creatures, lands, and artifacts from the battlefield, all cards from graveyards, and all cards from hand. Everything gets exiled, but you can cycle it for 7 and just destroy all lands, which is great in response to like a Teferi's Protection, which you can do in Gavi.
Yeah, but if you are looking at this and you go, hey, I'm a brand new player, let me look at a budget upgrade video on the Recon deck, and somebody's like, hey, let's slot in mass land destruction. It's like, what is that? I feel like I was set up for failure. And then, so I've never played any other partner with commanders, but there's definitely some that have caught my eye. Like you said, Pure and Toothy look like a lot of fun.
They're great.
I think that Ukima and whatever the other one is, the one that's like a whale wolf, and yeah, that looks interesting.
Yeah, they're really cool. They also have a little bit of old school CEDH presence with like a food chain combo, because Ukima you can get some pretty good combos going with that. But that's a nice little soul tie deck. I personally have always been interested in Tren and Sylvar. I always I look at the
human one, right? Like sack humans.
It's sacrificing humans and giving indestructible, but it's like it just seems like a fun little aristocrats deck there.
Mm-hmm.
So before I want to also mention kind of a secret tech with partners that I think it pays off with maybe not as much of like a tactical advantage in game, but sitting down at the table and somebody slams down say Eligeth, the Crossroads Augur. It's a partner commander. They're running no partner. That's a move where I'm like, oh, this guy's good at Magic the Gathering. And I gotta give a shout out to my buddy Devin who runs that deck, Eligeth, the Crossroads Augur. And you're like, man, why not play like any other blue partner and at least like give yourself that advantage? And he's, it's just the swag factor of sitting down and slamming down a commander that you could have an additional card in the command zone, but you don't. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong there, man.
Let me ask you this one then. Does this up the swagger factor for you? You sit down next to somebody and they play like the faceless one, that like draft version that you have to choose a color.
That's the background. The background. I'm a personal prismatic Piper enjoyer, which is the colorless partner that you can choose, before the game begins what color it is, and it's just a 3/3 for 5, and it's basically like, I guess it's better to have a blocker available than to not have anything at all. But it is a card that is just so utterly bad. Like, why? You know what? I want to play a deck that has 2 prismatic Pipers as my commander.
And you just pick the colors, and you're like, guess what? I have 98 good stuff in this exact color combination.
Yeah, on the card, there's actually nothing that says you could have 2 commanders if they both have partner, but they're the same card. Obviously, like in Commander, it's a singleton format, but that'd be pretty crazy. If somebody sat down with 2 prismatic Pipers, I would concede immediately.
Yeah, but what if it was the other one, the faceless one? Because that one is a background that says choose a background, and it's other than that's the same text, like pick your color. So you could literally be like, I don't even need a blocker in the command zone. I just need 2 backgrounds.
Yeah, it's personally, I think they're fun to have like the option if you're, really set on, like my buddy who loves Eligeth. If he wanted to have a strictly Eligeth deck that is just 1% more consistent, he could put that prismatic Piper in there. And I think having the option is cool. But what's the benefit of picking the prismatic Piper unless you're in a draft? Because you could choose any of the other, and Eligeth, he's a mono blue Sphinx commander. You could pick, Malcolm the Keen-Eyed Navigator, or Essior the Wardwing Familiar, which is like just another blue card that actually does something.
No, the reason is I don't want to play Malcolm because I'm not running Sphinx Pirates. That's why I don't want to play Malcolm. I want to play the Piper.
I'm playing Piper Kindred, and it has never won a game in the 465 games I've played with it.
No, but do you think there's like a meta move where you go, all right, I'm gonna play the commander I want, and then I throw down the Piper, and every game I just pick a different color that doesn't actually exist in my deck. So you think I have it, like, oh, I'm gonna play mono blue, but I'm going to name that my Piper is white. So you're like, oh, he's playing Azorius. He must have some removal.
He's holding up that Teferi's protection. He's
got that path. Doesn't have any planes out, but he's got a path.
All right, so partners are cool and all, but there's like another category which we kind of touched on briefly. We'll get to Doctor's Companion, but first I think we have to go chronologically and talk about companions, which are cards that you have as essentially an additional commander, but the process of bringing it onto the battlefield is not the same as casting a commander from the command zone. It's like you pay and bring it into your hand, and then you can cast it, and you only get it that one time. But it's there are several cards from Ikoria, like we kind of mentioned, that have these companion deck restrictions that are like, each permanent in your starting deck has CMC 2 or less. That's Luris of the Dream Den, or something like each card in your deck each permanent card has an activated ability, which is Zerta the Dawnwaker. These are cards that are not like commanders in the same sense, but they sit in your command zone. They're extra cards. You can run them with partner and have 3 cards in the command zone, which is unheard of, to be honest with you. But at the very least, it's another way to improve your consistency at the cost of your deck restriction, like having all your cards be odd or even.
I don't know how I feel about those though, because it's interesting. Now, it doesn't really thin your deck in the way that having a partner does, because if you were looking at it from like smoothing a curve or smoothing your draw out, having a partner reduces you, so you have like a 98 instead of a 99 card deck. Having a companion doesn't do that because it's a 101st card, not a 100th card.
Is that true?
It is true. It is true.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's the 101st card. I'm now flabbergasted. Also, I mean, some of them are cool, but I feel like it's more of a mental game of how do I want to build my deck than is it adding anything for me, to be honest with you. Like Zerta, I think Zerta and Luris are definitely the ones that have made the most impact on the game. Oh, your jaw just dropped. I can see it.
Yeah, I'm here on the mtg.fandom.com/wiki/companion, and it says a companion is not counted as one of the deck's 100 cards. #canceled. #love and mana canceled. Yeah, get me trending on Twitter, folks. I made a fool of myself on the internet. It's
happened.
Beyond nutty.
Oh, and you did it in an election year without talking about politics. That's really impressive.
I did it on an election day. It's election day. It's the primaries where we live. So that's crazy, man.
But yeah, no. So as far as the companions go, I think the only one I actually run, and I don't run it as a companion, is Obosh. Like I've got Obosh in my Carebeck deck, but I don't run any actual companions. Do you?
Well, yeah, I run Lutri the Spell Chaser in each of my decks because his companion restriction is each non-land card in your starting deck has a different name, which we play Commander where every card is a different name. So I play Lutri in every single one of my decks and nobody can tell me otherwise. Just kidding. No, he's been banned. But no, I don't run any companions. I've wanted to do a Luris of the Dream Den, with like Ayla or whatever there's I think there's some cool stuff there, and then obviously Gyruda is really cool. I'm a Zerta the Dawnwaker fan myself as well. I know I heard you say that. And Obosh the damage doubler, talk to me about Gandalf any day. I'm doubling damage. But the restrictions are a little harsh on most of these cards, and some of them are just like literally not allowed. Like obviously Lutri's banned, and then Urion the Sky Nomad has your starting deck contains at least 20 cards more than the minimum deck size. So like that's not even playable as a companion. So there's like basically 8 options, and if you're not doing something super specific, these are cards that I'm not fretting on that I can't hit those restrictions,
Yeah, I've definitely looked at them more along the lines of let's tickle the brewer side of my brain than the actual like, wow, this is enhancing my deck. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I run Karuga the Macro Sage in my Volo deck because it as a card is like a fine card, but having to keep your starting deck with all CMC 3 or greater, it's like, I like my Arcane Signet. I like my Farseek, my Nature's Lore, my 3 visits.
The closest I ever got to this was back over the holidays. We did a deck, and we've talked about this on here before. We did a deck exchange with friends, and I for whatever reason, I was like, oh, let's try something creative. So I drafted up an entire brew of Umori, which is the companion where everything that's non-land in your deck has to have the same card type.
All creatures, all enchantments, all artifacts.
Mm-hmm. So it was all creatures, and it was with the sapling of Kolfanor, which is like a 2/5, and then whenever it attacks, you flip the top card of your library, and then you lose life equal to its power, but gain life equal to its toughness.
I love it, honestly. I don't get me started on sapling of Kolfanor. That was like when I first got into Magic. I was like, oh, I'm making this deck. This is my deck. Cole. My name's Cole. It's Kolfanor. It's basically the same thing.
But yeah, I actually built out the entire deck, and I looked at it and I went, ugh. And then it got moved off the list, and I ended up actually brewing like 3 other decks before I finally settled on what to give somebody, and it did not have a partner. It was just a straight up mono deck.
That was a ton of fun though, and I do highly recommend that for everybody. Like building a deck for somebody else is like it's an exercise in if you're doing it on a budget, it's an exercise in patience for sure, because you gotta find some substitutions. Stat for you're like, oh, that card's 45 cents. That's way too expensive. Take that out. I need something that's 6 cents. But that would have been a really cool partner restriction, but like trying to do that on a budget. And I remember like us texting prior because neither of us had the other person. It was for a Secret Santa, and being like, man, I can't imagine. Like I was building a $50 deck at the time for my Secret Santa, and I'm like, I cannot imagine trying to restrict this to a companion restriction just because I'm already strapped for cards as is. Like. Yeah.
No, so then if we're going to look at it in a chronological order, so then the next one will be backgrounds, right? That we have to talk about. But there's another one I want to talk about just because it irks me, and I want your opinion on this.
Oof.
Because I think Wizards like fumbled on this one. The Strixhaven Deans, what is this trash? That should have been partners. Some of these like flip cards, because hear me out. Every single one of them works off of each other in a partner with standpoint, right? Like the white one and the black one, it would function well together as partner with. So would the blue and the green, and I don't even remember the names. It's like Lizette and
don't say it. The Dean of the Rose. I think that's actually a secretly busted card, and nobody's noticed. It's Golgar. That's actually the card I was thinking about changing Baron to. Believe it or not, it's Craterhoof in the command zone, but like in a very weird and unassuming way that revolves around life gain. Do not talk about that on the podcast. I need that to stay on the DL.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, tell me those couldn't have been partner with. Like, hey, we're co-deans of the colleges, and those would have shot up in popularity. But
hey, everybody, what's going on? It's the EDH. Welcome. My name's Cory, and here's your co-dean.
Yeah, welcome to class. See, it rolls right off the tongue. It's exactly what the people wanted. Haven't you ever been to a school and gone, wow, I've got 2 principals? It's fantastic.
So I do totally agree with you that the flip side, like you're like, man, I wish I could have all these going at the same time. They are really interesting cards. There's a lot of like the Kaldheim cards that are kind of similar to that. But, going back to backgrounds, I think backgrounds are, really interesting cards in general, because like obviously partners for the most part, they do things, but they benefit from being the command zone. The backgrounds, they can be in the command zone, and that's fine if you have choose a background commander. But honestly, I like kind of just stuffing these in any deck. Yeah, a deck that has partner, a deck that doesn't. If you're giving both your partner commanders the effect of a background, you get like double the value out of something like Cultist to the Absolute, which gives your commander creatures +3/+3 flying death touch and ward pay 3 life, and a little downside, but we don't got to talk about that. It's cool, and they're all legendary, so they benefit from any of the like Yoshimarus of the world that care about legendary permanence. It's a fun card in the command zone or in the 99.
Yeah. My problem, though, is I think they got burned a little bit at this point with the partners being a little busted, and then they decided to reel it in with partner with to make more synergistic cards. And then they got to choose a background, and they're kind of watered down as far as in the command zone options. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the backgrounds are really cool, but the choose a background commanders with the backgrounds kind of suck. They suck, dude. No. This is Corey's hot take, irrefutable hot take of the episode.
No, so I do stand by. I think that the backgrounds are a lot of the backgrounds are really strong. Tables. Passionate Archaeologist is like busted in Prosper, Stupid Sexy Prosper, and it's busted in Faldor, and it's busted in anything that cares about exile.
But they don't belong in the command zone. They're busted in those decks because those commanders work with it. Like, I run Acolyte of Bahamut in my Miram deck, but Miram doesn't have choose a background.
So I'm gonna pivot to tell you that I have a background commander deck, and it doesn't suck. Thank you. It's got the True Soul Zealot and the Haunted One, which gives my commander, my creatures that share a creature type with my commander, which is a goblin. It's a Rakdos goblin deck that used to be run by Wart, and it's interchangeable. It can be played with Wart too, but it basically just gives my creatures Undying, and having it like on turn 3 is I'm not upset about it in the command zone. It's just like a consistent piece of protection that I can pull out of the command zone at any time. It's an enchantment, so it already has kind of like a built-in layer of protection, and that it's one of the harder permanent types to remove if you're not playing green. But a lot of these cards are like, what would be the difference of having this on a creature other than that you could block with it? But like the Scion of Halaster that allows you to get some card advantage off the top. Like, I'd rather have that on top than a useless Prismatic Piper or something to that extent.
I believe what you're meaning to say is a flavorful moral victory Prismatic Piper.
If you ever beat me with Prismatic Piper, I will retire from the podcast. I'll retire from Magic the Gathering in general.
I'm gonna find a way, and it's gonna be like Prismatic Blink Piper. It's gonna be all music themed. It's gonna be a music themed Blink deck. It's gonna be Prismatic Piper, just nothing but bards. The musicians.
There's a Malcolm that you can put like chorus counters on or whatever.
Yeah.
There's like a weird blue enchantment that does some weird music stuff too. It's reserved list. I'll find it though.
It's gonna be Maeve, Insidious Singer, anything that has to do with like singing and music and melody, and Prismatic Piper. It's gonna be a CEDH Prismatic Piper build.
Yeah, I'll see you at the bottom of the charts there, buddy.
No, okay, look, I think the backgrounds are good, and I think some of the commanders are good. I just don't think I think they really reeled in, let me say it like that. I think they reeled in the busted potential after some of those partners. They didn't necessarily weigh how they might all interact with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, a lot of the I found the card, by the way. It's called Musician, and it is reserve list. It's 2 and a blue for a cumulative upkeep. Summon Mage. He's a 1/3, and you can tap him to put a music counter on target creature, and it basically just gives them a cumulative upkeep. That it's just an upkeep cost. It's not even cumulative unless you keep tapping the Musician. I'm actually gonna fucking buy this card out right now. Excuse my French there, but I think this is about to pop off.
Speaking of weird cards, I actually came across one this weekend because of St. Patrick's Day. Did you know there's a single leprechaun? Like I forget what the beginning of it is, but it's a leprechaun. And whenever it blocks or becomes blocked, any creature that's doing the blocking or attacking that gets blocked becomes green permanently. That's the entire effect.
This effect lasts indefinitely. Yeah, he's the Eiling Leprechaun. For 1 green, it's not bad. It's better. It's basically Bird's Paradise.
Yeah, but if I had like green hate effects for some reason, can I rule 0 that as a commander? I rule 0 that, and I build this entire deck that's built around like mono green, anti-green effects.
Yeah, there's a treasure trove of old weird reserve list cards, and that I'm buying out as we speak. So if this podcast is publicated, you will not be able to purchase a copy of Eiling Leprechaun. But imagining the world 50 seconds before you mentioned that card is beautiful.
I think okay, here's the partner, right? So next event we go to, I'll put it out here. Next event we go to, we're gonna rule 0 partner commanders for like a 2-headed giant game. I'll run the leprechaun, you run the musician, and then we'll work together to be the most obnoxious duo that runs around this. Does the deck ever win? No.
Well, so that actually reminds me, Cory, I wanted to talk about like a hidden category of partner commanders. And these are rule 0 partner commanders. Commanders that like you don't have any legal right to slam down in the command zone, but if you ask your buddies, they might let you play with it. And it's like a lot of times Wizards will print 2 cards that you're like, man, how are these not together? And people will give them the chance anyways. Like the famous example from Lord of the Rings is the Gimli and Legolas like counter of kills that just seem like they would go so well together, and yet they don't. But old school kind of makeshift partner at home commanders are the brothers Yamazaki, that give each other like +2/+2 in haste, and if there's exactly 2 copies of them, the legendary rule does not apply. It's just like such a cool concept. It's not obsessively aggressively strong. It's not like it's breaking any like part of the social contract, but it's just like a deck that it's a mono red deck that might be fun to run because the card is weak as a 1 of, it's weaker as a 2 of,
So I actually have a mono red rule 0 partner deck that I would like to pitch to you. And because I've had this idea floating around. I don't know if you can correct me if I mentioned it to you or not, because I may have off camera. Hear me out. Norin the Wary and Squee the Immortal.
Those are words that you put in a sentence in the same sentence together.
Okay, so for you guys at home, so Squeeze what? 1 and 2 red, like 1 red, and then he can be cast from exile, from the graveyard, from wherever, basically. And then Norin the Wary is a mono red, like 1 red, and then whenever anyone casts a spell or declares an attack, he exiles himself and then comes back later, like end of turn or something like that.
You're basically talking about Perforos deck. It's like any deck that's running those cards is running the Perforos, Impact Tremors, Warstorm Surge kind of suite, and it's a little bit abusive. I'm not gonna say it's a lot of bit abusive, but it's a little bit. I
just want to have something that never dies. It's like the whole goal is to destroy my commander. Well, you can never destroy my commanders.
You could try, but you will fail.
Other one, and I heard this one get thrown out before, which is Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful, and Mowu.
Good
Loyal
boys.
Companion.
They're both the cute dogs.
Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, have to do with counters. I think that would be fun, but that's more bustable, I think, than Norin the Squee Immortal.
I definitely disagree. I think Yoshimaru and Mowu is less abusable than Norin, and Norin and Squeeze, like, oh, it's cute, but it's just a better Norin deck. You're just playing Norin with like a small buff, and Norin on its own is like, if you're in the right deck list, man, Norin is pretty busted. So I'm like, in my mind, Norin plus Squee is just an enhanced mono red deck, whereas Yoshimaru and Mowu is the equivalent of running like Yoshimaru Sakashima or something like that, where you're just going to clone Yoshimaru and get like a very similar effect.
Actually, in the middle of making a Boros, like as far as drafting, I'm in the middle of like drafting up a Boros build that's Yoshimaru and Kedis, and I want to put Norin in it just for that, like, you cast a spell, oh, he came back, time to put another counter on Yoshimaru. I feel like it would just be obnoxiously abusable.
If that's your goal, to be noxiously abusable, then you're in the right track, man. You're in the right track.
I like to play CEDH, but where my C is casually obnoxious, like co EDH. So I mean, moving on from Rule Zero, let's talk my least favorite, Friends Forever. Do you like what the hell is this? I get it. It's for those little kids in Stranger Things, but like, why? How do I need this?
Well, it's universe. I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like we addressed this. It's universe within versions of universe beyond cards that they want to keep together. They don't want to let them into the pool of partner, just generic partner commanders, because even though I didn't 100% agree earlier, it's like maybe they want to try to restrict partners, certain partners from being together. And these cards are kind of juiced up. They've got a lot of colors. There's a 3-color, the Grixis, the version of 11 that is.
Oh, Sicily, I believe it is.
Yes, Sicily, the Haunted Mage, which gives you access to black, red, and blue, which if you're playing partner commanders in CEDH, you might only need those colors. And so you can run Sicily and Othhelm, the Sigardian Outcast, who's a green and a white, and give yourself a full Wooburg in the command zone with 2 partner commanders, which is generally a pretty, it's a pretty strong thing. The more colors you have, the more access to kind of those like staples, and typically the stronger your deck is going to be if you're not considering a budget. So these cards had to be separated.
Yeah, but the problem is none of them are viable. Let's be real here. Warnog is okay. I'll give you Warnog. Warnog is aight. The other 6, hot dookie trash.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to agree to disagree, but I think Sophina Spearsage Deserter is actually super busted too. Whenever she attacks, you investigate once for each non-token attacking creature. That's like a ton of artifact ETBs, investigating, that's drawing cards. There's some serious potential here. And just the fact that you can give yourself so many colors, you can do Bjorna and give yourself, everything sans green. It's blue, red, white, black. Or if you do like Bjorna and Wernog, or there's a million different combinations. I guess there's not. No.
Why? For once, can I make a hot take where you just jump on the bandwagon? Jump into the sizzling pan with me on these hot takes.
But Cory, as an AI co-host, I am programmed to disagree with everything you suggest.
If I picked an AI co-host and I name them so similar to my name, I've really dropped the ball. So we both agree they're garbage, right?
Well, okay, so yeah, they're just
look, if I'm in it just for the colors, because if your argument is we should have them paired up for the colors, why don't I just rule 0 the Dragon and I'll partner with Edgar Markov just because I want to be that guy.
I'm ending the call. Obviously, partner with and in a Rule 0 conversation has to be pretty reasonable. You can't say I'm going to partner Urza with the Dragon or anything like that, because it just doesn't really make sense.
Urza Dragon.
You want to pick cards that are weaker or are like, why is this not partner commanders? If you have to justify it, then it's a bad move. But Friends Forever is kind of a similar version to the most recent installation of having 2 cards in the command zone with a unique new keyword, and that's Doctor's Companion. Which, if you I don't know, Cory, if you were under a rock for the last 365 days or so. But
it was actually
the Doctor Who set came out. What? Yeah, and it's got some pretty cool stuff. But basically, what we're looking at here is cards that have essentially a friends forever restriction, in that they do not have access to regular partners. They don't have access to anything other than themselves, but they are all of the Time Lord Doctors and all of the Doctor's companion creatures that can act as a secondary companion as though they had partner. It's not that complicated. I don't know why I'm explaining it so much, but they're cool and they're new, and they opened up a lot of 3 and 4 color combinations that didn't previously have a ton of options.
So these are better than Friends Forever because I think because the pool's wider for me, anyways. Like the Friends Forever thing, it's because the pool's so small, and I don't think either of them necessarily synergize super well. I think they just have like, oh, that's cool to the character's lore, but it doesn't necessarily gel real hot. I think the Doctor's Companion and Doctors gel a lot better, especially like you've got ones that manipulate counters, you got ones that manipulate like upkeeps, and there's just so much overlap with them that you have better decks you can pull out of them. What is this, like, Max and his skateboard? That's garbage. Garbage, Cole.
I totally agree. I think Doctor's Companion is a little bit stronger because the options are so much wider, but it just depends on like how potent you think the Friends Forever commanders are. Like if you want to run you get more options with the Doctor's Companion, but to be honest with you, they all kind of feel like they're squished into like a Doctor Who style niche of like all the cards care about exiling, or they care about like other Doctor Who cards. So I think, to be perfectly honest with you, they're about the even same level of
no, they're not. Listen, one of them cares about things like upkeep. These are valid things. Artifacts, valid things. In Friends Forever, they care about the number 11. That's invalid garbage. Though I do respect Grixis as a choice because it is the perfect color pairing.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly. I've got you there.
So we've pretty much touched on all the different types of extra cards in the command zone. Is there anything else that you can think of as far as like different? Obviously, there's Oathbreaker. We didn't get a chance to talk too much about that, but that's a format where you have a planeswalker in the commander that doesn't have to have in the command zone, that doesn't have to be a commander, because you're not playing commander, you're playing Oathbreaker, and you can stick any little instant or sorcery in your command zone alongside it. Those are extra cards in the command zone in a way.
Sure. Well, okay. How do you feel about commanders that have non-legendary creatures on the backside? I feel like the Prismatic Bridge is a famous one. You've got even things like the gods from Kaldheim, where you got like Bergie's horn on the backside of one. Valky's got a thing. Turgid's got a thing on the backside of theirs.
I like them. I mean, I don't see any problem with that as long as it's a legendary creature. It's like on one side, it should be fine. I mean, we have Shorakai, who is a straight up just an artifact. Obviously, he's a vehicle, so he can become a creature. But I've been playing with my Erebos, which stays in as an enchantment for the last 5 or 6 years at this point, and I love that sort of thing. I love putting weird stuff in the command zone. I'm the kind of guy who's open to playing with a lot of those like old school, even the Kamigawa flip gods like Bushi, Tenderfoot, and stuff like that starts off as either a regular non-legendary creature and then flips into a legendary creature. Like there's, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to have fun playing cards with my homies, and I can get over the restrictions there pretty easily as long as as long as it's fun gameplay.
I like how your goal is to have fun and my goal is to be casually obnoxious. Like not full blown obnoxious, but just kind of skirting under the radar with unbearable, obnoxious, overbearingness.
Oh, just a little bit.
Okay, just to wrap this up, let's say a commander that you don't have. Well, like, what's a partner deck that you do not have that you would be most likely to build in the future?
Man, I mean,
Tell me on it.
for me, it would be I've always kind of looked at after the background commanders dropped. I really liked Wilson, the Refined Grizzly. Everybody who's heard the podcast will know that I have a Galta deck that I'm a huge fan of. That's a 12/12, trampler. That's basically the deck. Wink, wink. But so I'm a huge fan of this Wilson Refined Grizzly, who's 1 and a green. He can't be countered. He has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. Beautiful keywords right there. And he's a 2/2 with Ward 2. So I like this guy because you can slam dunk him into any background deck, but particularly Raised by Giants strikes my interest. It gives base power to commander creatures you control 10/10, and it does make them giants in addition to their other types. But this would be like, if I was going to refresh my Galta deck, I would probably go for a Wilson Refined Grizzly build, because Wilson, Galta, they both cost 2 mana, but I think one of them is a little less assuming in the command zone.
That's true. That's very true. I think if it were for me, and I know this isn't an option, but this might be like a rule 0 option I could have, if you'll allow it. Now that they had Francisco, the parrot from Ixalan, like the partner parrots for the pirates, I kind of wish that there was a thruple of partners I could have that would just be like Breaches, Malcolm, and Francisco, just so I could have Grixis Pirates. I mean, you could have Grixis Pirates, but I just mean with three different partners.
There's no way to have Grixis Pirates, man. Admiral, Beckett Brass, Beckett Brass Unsinkable. There's no way to do Grixis Pirates. No, I'm just kidding around. I think that's a great combo. I love Francisco. When I saw that card, I was like, man, that is arguably one of the cutest cards to get dropped in 2023, and I'll take that to the grave.
All right. Well, I believe that that should approach us towards the end of today's episode. So we're gonna hop into question of the week and card of the week. So Cole, our question of the week. This comes from, and I'm gonna probably jack this up, so hopefully I don't butcher this too bad. This comes from Jax Ursize.
Okay.
They ask, outside of card sleeves, what is the coolest bit of accoutrement for your deck?
Oh, well, that's a super great question, Jaxercise. Thanks for asking, and thanks for engaging with the podcast. You're the best. We love you. Personally, yeah, I mean, I'm like a dice fiend. Okay, so to be honest with you, the best piece of accoutrements that I've ever received was like a command zone mini playmat that Cory and I both received a copy of when we went to the first command fest back in like 2020 or something like that. And it's just absolutely epic. It has like 4 nice little spots for each person's commander. It has spots for you to put dice with commander damage, and each spot is assigned. And it's just like, man, you slam that down, and everybody at the table doesn't have to have their own little makeshift commander pile. It's like we all get united under the help of Cool Stuff Inc. But personally, I'm a dice fiend. I love collecting little weird dice. I have some really cool wooden dice that have a lot of sentimental value to me. I have a massive D20 that always gets a laugh when I bust it out. And I have a little dice that is like a mood or attitude dice that a DM might use. But you roll it and it shows you a smiley face, a frowny face, an angry, like all sorts of renditions of essentially emojis. And I think that dice brings more joy to the table than my entire presence. Like, I am a negative force compared to that dice. That dice brings out smiles, whereas the cards that I play bring out frowns.
You know what? Speaking of dice, you know what one of my favorite things that you've ever done in a game is? So a couple weeks ago, we were playing, and I don't even remember what deck you were playing, but you started with this like massive D20 on your card to represent 1/1 counters, and then as your card got more and more threatening, the dice you would swap out for smaller and smaller d20s to try and downplay the threat to the point where you eventually had like these not microscopic, but you had like mini d20s to represent like 10 1/1 counters on something.
That's definitely a Managorger Hydra play where Managorger Hydra has one counter, but you put the massive D20 and then slowly reduce the size to make it look less threatening. These are life hacks that do not cost money, people. Provided you already have the deck and the dice, this is gonna improve your win percentage by probably 3 to 5%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of a year, that's like 2 to 3 more games that you win because of the psychological gameplay of decreasing dice size, decreasing threat. What about you, Cory? What's your favorite piece of gear that you have for Magic?
So favorite piece of gear that I have for Magic? That's a good question because I'm pretty straightforward with Magic. I do really like those command zones that we got out of cool stuff from Command Fest. Those we use pretty much every game night that we play together. I do have something that I'm partial to, but I've yet to find the right deck for, which are I like people that when they've got one-off gimmicks that they have like little tchotchkes for them. So for example, you've got in your Scarab God deck, you've got like little tombstones or little coffins that you can put on to represent that they've been zombified.
Oh yeah.
Another great one is our friend Ken. He has a Bernard, like the sculptor deck where they turn things into cookies, and he's got little gingerbread meeple that he can drop on a deck to show that, or drop on a card to show that they're cookies. So stuff like that, those like weird little gimmicky like game tokens, those are fantastic when you see people drop those out.
It adds another element to the game for sure.
It really does, because you almost stop paying attention. It's like your tiny dice, right? You almost stop paying attention to what the card actually does because you're so enamored by all the swag on their board.
Right. It's distracting. Distracting accoutrements are definitely the best because they give you kind of a financial advantage against your opponents. Oh, you like my trinkets? Well, now you won't notice that I just cast the one ring, or something to that effect. So
you won't notice I cast the one ring if I have tiny little rings to put on it. Hey, but Exercise, thank you for your question of the week. Now we're going to be moving on to card of the week. Oh, wait, we're not. So I thought we would try something new this week, Cole. So usually in this slot, you give us an obscure, strange, or otherwise enticing card that we should be trying out in our decks.
Right.
But I'm going to turn the tables on you. So this week, I have the cards, and you have the brew to make it happen. So we'll be checking out a brew of the week. Now, this comes from our friend Josh. So when we reached out on Twitter, we were asking everybody what their favorite partner commanders were, or their favorite partners to run in the command zone, and Josh came to us with a bit of a problem. So he has 2 partner commanders that I thought would be very fitting to bring up here. He has 2 partner commanders that he has always wanted to build, but he does not necessarily, or has not necessarily found the right build for them.
Right.
And we'll look at it right now. So we've got Rebek, Architect of Ascension, and we've got each Tekik, Salvage Splicer. So Rebek is 3 and a white. Artifacts for a 3/4 human artificer. Artifacts you control have protection from each converted mana cost among artifacts you control. And then each Tekik, I guess, would be 4 and a green for a 1/1 human artificer. Whenever it enters the battlefield, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on it and a 1/1 counter on each golem you control. Now, for a curveball, Josh wants to build this deck, but he does not want to go in the golem route. So can you provide some sweet non-golem tech to make this partner pairing work?
Yeah, so you hit me up with this Josh hit us up with this conundrum, quite frankly. And my first thought is, Rebecca, he protect. Each to kick. He project. He makes the 3/3 golem artifact creature tokens. Rebecca is more of a protection spell for your artifacts. So if Josh is trying to avoid artifacts, like my first thought was like, well, maybe we don't treat them as artifacts, we treat them as tokens, and we kind of go into a populate route. With Selesnya. So my first thought is I go back to like old school MTG Mudsta Trostani Selesnya's voice, type beat. But I looked on EDH Rec. I saw that's the bottom most selected. There's 7 decks. There's 7 populate decks. That's 0.0000% of decks on EDH Rec, and that's a little too common for me. So what I decided to do for Josh is kind of make a deck that's revolving around Birthing Pod. The key words here on each to kick are whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. It doesn't care about golems. I mean, yeah, it puts the 1/1 counters on each golem you control, but at the end of the day, if I don't control any golems, we're still making money off of getting the 1/1 counters out the each to kick. So what I have is a Birthing Pod deck. You already have the 4 CMC Rebecca. You have the 5 CMC each to kick. You're able to set up a Birthing Pod line really easily here. That's going to give you some interesting Selesnya pieces to help close out the game. My first thought is that you're birthing podding away artifacts or artifact creatures into other artifact creatures to get the bonus. But you could just birthing pod Rebecca away for a little cheeky Seedborn Muse and kind of get this engine going. So my deck is each to keek, Rebecca, Secret Commander, Seedborn Muse. I have every green tutor, I have every white protection spell, and I'm just trying to get Seedborn Muse out here and my birthing pod so I can start comboing away with a little bit of cheeky Selesnya birthing pod shenanigans.
All right, so there we go. Hey Josh, so there you go. There is your Selesnya golem, not golem, golem, non-golem partner commanders. So hey guys, let us know if you like this over a traditional card of the week. I don't know that we'll necessarily do it for this pairing because we just kind of did it impromptu, but if we continue doing this brews, maybe we'll put them up online. We'll have Cole brew out a full 100 card deck and we can throw it up on the Mox field or something like that for the podcast. So give us your feedback. If you hate his build, feel free to let him know as well. Because he didn't put a single golem in here. What is he thinking? What is this garbage, Cole? No golems? Come on, you're leading Josh astray. What you're supposed to do is convince him that golems are the actual build of the people.
Golem? I got 99 problems, but golems ain't one.
All right, guys, so there you have it. We're just going to move on from that. There you have it. Question of the week, brew of the week. That brings us to the very end of today's episode. If you would like to submit a brew you might want to see us do in a future episode, feel free to hit us up. And where you can do that, you can reach out to Cole at loveandmana.mtg.
That's right.
On all those locations out there in which that exists. You can reach out to me at Sleevecard, or you can reach out to the podcast directly at UrCastPod or contact.urcast@gmail.com. We do want to thank all you guys because we've been seeing a lot of cool feedback and interactions kind of sprouting up across Twitter, across Spotify, YouTube, all that kind of good stuff. So thank you very much for tuning in and checking out the episode. And thank you for making it to the end of today's episode. So we want you to have yourselves a magical Friday, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.